Alright, with me are two 17-inch gaming laptops that are absolute beasts. This is the Razer Blade Pro. It's a 17-inch with an RTX 2080 Max-Q, and this is the MSI GS75, also with an RTX 2080 Max-Q. They each have basically the same specs, an i7-9750H, 32 gigabytes of high-performance RAM. Similar in terms of port selection. The key difference, though, is the display. Now, what I've been trying to find is a new laptop replacement, something that's going to give me more power than my 15-inch Razer Blade from 2018 with a 1070 Max-Q, and also something that can be heavier because I don't actually need to travel as much as I used to. In fact, my laptop basically serves as a desktop. It's plugged into external accessories and into an external monitor. So the key difference between the two is in the display. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison, but I'm really glad that Razer sent this over when I let them know that I was looking at 17 inchers, because this has a 4K display that's also touch sensitive, and it has a 120 Hz refresh. This is a 1080p display with a 144 Hz refresh. Now, you're not really going to notice the difference between 144 and 120, but certainly you'll notice a difference between 4K and 1080p. And importantly, because of the way that Razer has engineered the cooling by including two additional fans and their vapor chamber technology, this cools better and it's quieter when performing in games than the MSI. Now, there's something going on here with me. I mostly am a Razer fan. I like their aesthetic. I'm not a huge fan of the green triple-headed snake logo, but the rest of it, I love the way they lay things out and the thick, heavy, substantive aluminum chassis. Then something happened when I finally got my hands on this MSI, something I didn't expect. Its build quality is actually pretty good. If the Razer Blade is a 9 out of 10, the MSI is about a 7 out of 10. They're pretty close. And the reason I knock it down is it's mainly because of one thing. When I'm carrying this around, I notice that the lid sort of wobbles. And I took it a step further by testing the two side by side. And importantly, there we go. So they're both pretty sturdy here, but once you get closer to close, the MSI just collapses. Now, that's not a huge deal because you're not going to walk around with your lid open by 1 to 2 inches, but it's a way of demonstrating the weak, or I guess just not as well-tuned hinge technology, and that goes a long way. When you lift it up, you kind of feel the wobble, and when you're walking around, you can feel and sometimes hear the clasping of the display to the chassis, and it's not a very reassuring feeling when you spend $30,000 on a laptop. Now, talking about price, this does range, again, it's a 2080 model, it does range around $300 to $3,200, depends on where you're shopping. This sucker, with the same GPU, CPU, RAM, and effectively the same storage, but has the 4K display, is about $3,500 or $3,600 depending on where you shop. Razer.com has it for $3,600. So you're going to pay quite a bit more to get the 4K, but you do get to take advantage more of the 2080 because it's, you know, capable of doing high resolution displays. There's nothing I threw at this MSI that didn't max out at 144 Hz on 1080p. This, however, did have issues getting above 75, 80 frames per second in 4K, but it's 4K, so it looks really good, and honestly 60 to 75 frames per second is still pretty awesome. So if you're doing competitive first-person shooters, like say a Fortnite, then it does make sense to be at the 1080 spot with 144 Hz. But if you're playing games because you love the way they look, and you're certainly happy with 60 frames per second-ish, such as, say, The Witcher 3, this makes a ton of sense if you can afford it. So, anyhow, there's one more key difference that I would be remiss not to mention, and that's the weight. The Razer Blade Pro is about 6.06 pounds, whereas the MSI GS75 is about 5 pounds. This weighs slightly more than the 15-inch Razer Blade, so it's pretty awesome in that regard, but it is about 10% less in terms of performance on the GPU. And as I was saying that, I was reminded about one more thing that drives me nuts about the MSI. The power. The power port is in the middle of the left side. So if you have a mouse, anything around here, there's going to be cable battles happening, and you don't want to have that happen. So that means you're going to put your mouse on the right hand side. Well, then you're going to have 8 feet of cord lying around. Okay, not 8 feet of cord, but you're going to have a lot of cord lying around that you otherwise wouldn't have lying around on another laptop. I like what Razer did, and they've been doing it since they went this design language in 2018. The power is on the top left corner, so it's out of the way, and it's angled in such a way that it sort of just kind of hooks in there, and you're not going to have to worry about it really being yanked out. They did a pretty good job with that. So those are my thoughts on the two laptops. If I had to pick and it was price neutral, I'd go with the Blade, but I do really like what MSI did here. I just kind of sucks with that 10% performance dip between the two 2080s. So I hope you liked the video. Please give us a like and a sub, and we'll be back with more videos. Thanks.